Hey, good evening, everyone. We're so excited to have you on behalf of the Phi Beta Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I'm Rafael Matos, the Director of Social Action for the chapter. And we want to welcome you to the Science of Love. This is our podcast. It is part of our Sigma Wellness series under our social action programming. Sigma Wellness is the branch of the organization. There's a programmatic thrust that focuses on uh, men's health initiative to get some conversations with our membership and our community members about healthy living and how do you develop good relationships. And that's what we're going to focus here. How do we develop good relationships in terms of with our partners? So I'm very excited. I'm your co-host. And so now I want to introduce to you my co-host and really the star of this show, my Sigma brother, Brother Dr. Ryeal Simms. So please let's welcome Brother Simms. Brother Simms, how are you doing
Hey,
this fine day?
good, good. How are you?
Man, listen, I am fantastic. So the science of love, for those of you that don't know, this was really came out of Brother Sim's love for wanting to make sure to share his knowledge and what he's accumulated in the world to make sure that men, women, people in general, we just have better relationships. Now, Brother Simms is known as the relationship scientist, right? So we're gonna get right into it because I just think that that is such a fascinating descriptor. So, Brother Sims, tell us, how did you become the relationship scientist?
Yeah, I had been speaking for a long time and about relationships and, have all the degrees and the certificates and everything. But what was so important to me was that even though I'm on panels and we're talking about relationships, we just couldn't give the people that 360 degree to the full circle as to understand why we do what we do from an eco biopsychosocial and spiritual point of view. So then that's when I realized I needed to go back and to learn a little bit more about the brain and a little bit more about biology, a little bit more about chemistry, so I can actually explain why we do what we do, right? And get that science part of it so we can really understand, oh, that's why, right? So it was to add the science on it. So that's when I specialized in neuroscience, neurochemistry, and neurobiology, right? To actually explain and to give more understanding of why we do what we do.
Okay, okay. So what have been some of the fascinating things you've learned in your journey in terms of relationships?
Yeah, you know, we talk about just starting at the lowest common denominator, just communication. This is what we all talk about. Everybody says, communication. Communication is the best. That's the key to the relationship. But what we don't really explain is really everybody communicates. It's impossible not to communicate because if we're not communicating verbally, we're communicating what? Non-verbally, right? So it's so important to understand the communication. That's one of the major keys to when we are actually trying to have a vitalized, harmonious, cohesive working relationship, right? Is to actually understand the communication. And one thing that I realized is that we use the term of teaching people how to communicate when actually we all have this skill, So what I try to do is to help you to be more mindful of the communication skills that you already possess within yourself already. Because if you've graduated from high school, college, we listen to understand, right? So that tool is there, right? So we just don't know that we could use that same tool when we actually venture into the relationship arena. So when we're actually in a relationship, you know how to listen, you know how to understand, right? But you don't want to use it when we get into the relationship, right? Because it comes to authoritative situation where, well, that was the teacher. Okay. Well, we need to respect each other too as well. That's your wife or that's your husband, right? So you should use the same skill to listen to understand, to comprehend, to be an empirical listener in order to respond correctly.
So, you're throwing words out there like empirical, science, communication. Sounds
Yeah,
very technical. So, what I'm understanding is, and I want to ask you,
yeah,
is love, is it more scientific? Is it more science than it is emotions? Help me to understand.
yeah. It's actually, I get that question a lot. It is actually both. It really is. It's more social compatibility and what we call the major histocompatibility, the chemistry, right? And the chemistry usually happens first, right? We have that chemistry with each other, and we're experiencing these altered state of consciousness, right? This euphoria, this high that we experience, right? And that's so important to understand that it's definitely both. It's definitely our chemistry and our social compatibility. And our social compatibility is what? Getting to know you, getting to know each other. You're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. You like to watch uh, um, uh, spooky movies. I'm dating myself when I use the spooky movie term, right? You like sports, I like football. Well, that's social compatibility, right? And it's important to understand too our chemistry compatibility too as well. Yeah,
Okay, um, so I have some questions for you, but I also want to let our audience out there know. Please type your questions in the chat because if you have a question, we want to make sure we get to it. So we're gonna go back and forth. Now I see that Marty has put a question out here, so I want to ask this question. In your experience, what prevents couples from communicating effectively?
yeah, wanting to win, you know, as well too. Now I'm gonna talk about social and science. Wanting to win, when we get in this debate of trying to communicate with each other and wanting to be right, right, and not giving the other person an opportunity to actually understand what they're saying, because sometimes we're arguing, we're having fights, communication, and we don't really understand what we're fighting about. We don't really understand what we're communicating about because now it's to the point where our blood level is exploded, right? And there's been many studies with men too that our testosterone levels get so high to a point where we can't even really comprehend of what our significant other is actually saying, right? So I think what's really, really important is learning communication skills as to when you're an adult, when you're talking to somebody, something as simple as, so what I'm hearing you say is, I mean, we use that in business, right? When you don't understand something, it's, so what I'm hearing you say is, let that person repeat what you're saying so you know that what you communicated to that person was right, right? And I use that every day. I mean, I use that in my, everyday life. If somebody's trying to explain something to me that I don't understand, I repeat it, what we call mirroring back the communication, right? So we say, so what I'm hearing you say is that you have other questions for me and you would like for me to answer those questions when they pop up. And then, is that right? And so then that's when that person is saying, yeah, that's exactly right. So that's letting the other person know that I do hear you and I do understand you. Now I'm going to answer it. Right. So I hope I
Now,
answered that right.
well,
Yeah.
no, that's great insight. Now, you alluded to this earlier, but if you're talking about using skills that a lot of us are familiar with, right? Well, I should
That's right.
say some of us are familiar with, right? Because you're talking about skills we use in business when we're at work, interacting those in those areas. Well, that help me to understand why is it that we can apply those in our relationship settings.
Yeah, because we think we don't have to respect our significant other like we respect a boss, like we respect our teacher, our professor, right? We don't look at each other as, I really want to respect you because that's what it's really about. It's really about respecting that other person's opinion. Respect that other person's communication that they're trying to explain to you. Don't look at it as you're my wife, you're not my teacher. You're my wife, you're not my boss. You're my wife, you're not my mother, you're not my father, right? But it's the same thing. We have to give that respect And once we do that, once we become mindful of respecting, being able to listen, right? Being able to say, okay, let me cool down. All right, let me cool down and let me respect you by hearing what you really say, right? And I think we could help each other create a vitalized, harmonious, cohesive working relationship.
All right, I see that Brother Basley is asking us a question, and he wants to know what are the health benefits of a positive partnership, and what are the health dangers of an abusive relationship. So the first one, what are the positive benefits? What are the benefits of a positive partnership?
Yeah, the benefits actually, we hear this all the time, especially with married men, that we actually live longer, right? And the benefits, how is that? What's really happening to our bodies when we're in relationships? How are we actually benefiting from that, right? Biologically, we receive certain chemicals with each other. So when we are actually pair bonding, we are actually receiving chemicals, like dopamine, serotonin, phenylethylamine, vasopressin. All of these are natural drugs that's actually making us feel good. You right? That's keeping us in a this altered state of consciousness, this high, this love. Because when we're talking about love, these are the chemicals that help us stay into love as well. So we get the benefits of how our bodies and how our biological body is feeling when we interact with our significant other. Our wife makes us feel good when she's doing good, when she's doing things for us. We release serotonin. That serotonin makes you feel good, right? So those are some of the biological benefits that we get. And I mean, it's just that feeling of love, that feeling of just, wow, she really loves me. Wow, she bought me this, right? Just knowing that flowers came home today. I got these flowers, and when you get those flowers, the benefit biologically is that rush of dopamine, right? What is dopamine? Dopamine is it makes you high, right? It puts you in this altered state of consciousness. So it's so important to make sure that we keep novelty in our relationship. Novelty in our relationship is when we are doing other things. We're not we don't become when they say you just become comfortable in your relationship and you don't do anything anymore, you don't go places anymore, right? Novelty keeps you aroused. We actually have a sister, a Zeta sister that I spoke with before in a show, and Dr. Rizana, and she talks about when you go to the amusement park, just when you go to the amusement park, it's arousal, right? It makes your body, you having this arousal feeling. So by the time you get home, you can be intimate, right? Because that's part of the foreplay, right? And that's part of what makes us feel good. Those are all those wonderful benefits. Now, you got a partner to help you when you are struggling with certain situations, when you're struggling with business, when you're struggling with certain things, you got your partner. You have your partner to be right there for you, to submit his or her intelligence unto you. Hey, I lost my job as a plumber, right? And I'm just giving an example. I lost my job as a plumber, and now I'm looking for a job, my plumbing job, but I can't find a plumbing job. I'm really depressed. I'm stressed out. So my wife comes to me and says, hey, why are you looking for a plumbing job? Right? When you can create your own plumbing business, you know everything about plumbing. So you see the benefit that we have, for her to submit her intelligence unto me. So there's so many benefits.
Well, now taking this on the flip side, right? If we're in an abusive relationship, what are some of the dangers? Probably even the ones that we don't think about being in Brother Basie said abusive, but let's also talk about unhealthy relationships.
Yeah, yeah, unhealthy relationships. I mean, and how do you tell I'm in an unhealthy relationship when that spark is no longer there, when we're not being affectionate with each other, we're not being, we're not cuddling with each other, right? We don't sleep with each other, and then we start cursing each other out, right? We start talking about each other because abuse isn't just only physical, right? Abuse is also verbal as well, because when we talk about, you remember the old saying, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words don't hurt you?
Right.
Well, that's not true. Words will hurt you. Words can actually kill you, right? And so we're starting to learn that now, that those words that we say to each other, when we say something bad and we feel bad when that person says, "Oh, well, you need to lose weight. You too fat," right? When we're verbally abusing our significant other. And this goes both ways. So that really hurts our feelings, right? This is the interesting thing. When I talk about pain, hurt, it's associated with the same brain regions, which we call the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex. That same brain region that's associated with physical pain is the same brain region that's associated with emotional pain. So imagine you being told you're no good, you're no good man, you're no good woman, or you're fat, or you this. That's pain. That is actually reacting to our body in physical pain. That physical pain triggers a certain part of our brain that's called the amygdala and causes dis-ease in our body, because that's the fight or flight. And when we're in that fight or flight, we're receiving certain chemicals like androstenone and stuff like that. So it's actually not good for us in an abusive relationship. And then what do we do when it's now a period where you now should seek help? You should actually seek counseling. And if counseling doesn't work, you can't force it. You can't force what's not there. Usually, sometimes it can work, right? That's one of the main things we're saying. If you exhaust all your options, then that's when hey, nothing's changing, nothing's getting better. It's time to move on, instead of just, sitting in a relationship that's not moving at all.
Now, brother Sims, you said something that just shook my foundations. You said words can kill you. What do you mean by that? Like, you
Yeah,
mean literally somebody saying something to me can actually push me to death?
absolutely, absolutely. And not only if you, because we know this even with little kids today now. We're hearing more about bullying, right? And what's happening with the people that are bullying little kids in schools, what's happening with the young adult, I mean the adolescents, they're actually committing suicide, right?
Mm,
And we hear these words to the point where we say to ourselves, I'm I'm no longer worth anything to my significant
mm,
other. I'm nothing to my significant other. I'm nothing to the world, right? Because my
mm,
significant other told me this. My significant other said, "You are so fat or ugly or dumb, no man will ever want you," right? Or vice versa, right? You are no good man. What woman would ever want to be with you? Those words are implanted in our brain. And then if that time that we just might not have that willpower that people always say, you don't always have this willpower, you don't always have this strong willpower that we speak of. Sometimes we just don't have it, and it can actually affect us to the point where we start believing it, right? It gets to the point where we start talking to ourselves and saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe I'm really no good. Maybe I'm not a no good man. Maybe I am just a woman that nobody would ever be interested in. You start self treating yourself with this diagnose, right? To the point where you start not caring about self. But not only that, what I mentioned earlier is when we allow those words to affect our bodies, we trigger this certain thing that's in our limbic system called the amygdala. When that amygdala is on, it's only supposed to be on for a short period of time. And that's our natural stress, right? That's stress that we go through, and this stress response happens in everybody, but it only supposed to happen for a short period. And that fight or flight is, you think you see a snake in the ground, and instantly you stop because it's actually freeze, fight or flight. So you think you see a snake, and the time of the information that goes to our prefrontal cortex, that's our CEO. That's how we think, right? That's how we make decisions, and to see if those are right decisions that we're making. So we look at the ground, and when we realize when we lit the ground that is actually not a snake, it's actually a stick. So what happens is our fight or flight, our sympathetic nervous system, that causes us to get this glucose, cortisol, adrenaline. When our body gets afraid, when we're afraid, right? It comes down when we realize it's a stick. So I'm going back to your question, Brother Montos. So how does it really kill? So when we're getting these words, constantly getting these words, remember when I said the fight or flight only is there for a short period of time. It's only there for you to respond. If it's a fire, then run and get out, right? And so now you're safe, and so it's going to come down. Imagine being in your fight or flight, and it's always up. It's always high. It's not supposed to be 24 hours a day. So when that happens, it shuts down certain components of our body, our digestive system. It tells us when you're in fight or flight, it says, you don't need your digestive system. We're going to stop it right now. You don't need certain sugars that go to your body, to your brain, to the body parts. You don't need that right now. We're going to borrow it. But you need them throughout the day, but you don't have them throughout the day. So now your body is starting to experience dis-ease. So things in your body and your components are not working right. And this is actually what makes us sick. That's why we have to get out of it. That's why you heard this term before, right? Toxic relationship. That's toxic of what you are experiencing in a toxic relationship that can kill you.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. It's very eye opening. Going to another question, right? Because you talk about toxic relationships. Perfect segue for the next question that was asked, which is you're in a relationship, right? And so at what point, what is that telltale sign that lets you know, listen, it's time to end this relationship?
Yeah, that's when you've exhausted everything, when you went to counseling, when you've tried your own personal therapy, right? When you've done everything that you can do to try to make this relationship work and nothing's working. When you've had that conversation with each other and nothing's working, right? Then there's no sense in trying to just stay in a relationship that's going nowhere. And then it's just time to just say, hey, it's been real. I love you, but we lost whatever we had. It's just not there. Now, can we get it? Can we get it in most cases? Yeah. In most cases, we can get it back. But we know when people say, hey, I've been divorced. And this isn't, it isn't, you think, oh, well, this is only for certain people. I mean, ministers get divorced too as well, right? You get to the point where you just realize you just can't force it.
Well, now, let me ask you this, because I'm sure that a lot of us know at least one person, or may know at least one person, who is in a bad relationship. They can recognize they're not in a good relationship, but they'll say things like, but I love it, still love me, some of him, we're going to make it work. And they try everything, and everything is telling them to leave, but they won't leave that person. So what is happening there, right, from a neurological perspective that
Yes.
will keep someone in a relationship that's not good for them, and they know it's not good for them?
Yes. One component is sex. Being addicted to our significant other. You see, you have all these. Oh, you remember this song? Break up to make up. That's all we do. First we love you, then we hate you, right?
Right.
Right? Soon as you make up, remember those chemicals that I talked about earlier? All those neurotransmitters make you feel good. All those neurotransmitters make you high. And we become addicted to those chemicals, right? So it becomes really challenging to actually break up and to depart from each other. right? Because we're sticking on, man, I can make this work, I can make this work. And you know it's not happening. You know, you feel it in your heart that the chemistry is no longer there, right? But yet still, we still, try to make it work. But eventually we just have to get to that point. And that's natural. That's natural to try to stay in it as long as you can, because sometimes we might get blessed and get with the right counselor, right? That actually can help you, So it is natural to fight for that marriage, right? But when you're fighting for that marriage, it is a point that you'll realize you just got to let it go.
Understood. Understood. Now, somebody in the audience asked, "How powerful are platonic relationships? Where do they fit in all this?"
Well, a platonic relationship, I mean, you, see, we're still dealing with chemistry.
Hmm.
So sometimes we think we're in an okay platonic relationship, right? We think, this is fine. We have some agreements and everything. But then when it comes to the chemistry, you end up finding yourself wanting more than just that kind of relationship, right? Or one of you. And then the other one was like, oh, I thought we had an agreement that, this was just cool. What's the new terms? What's the new terms in the relationship? Friends with benefits, right? Right.
Yeah, friends with benefits.
Yeah, so you just have to be careful because we could still get emotionally and physically and biologically involved with each other.
But now, I need you to help me to unpack a little bit more of this. How do I become addicted to a person? Like, how does one person become addicted to another person?
Yeah. See, it's all of those drugs, and that's why detoxing is so important. If we don't have time to talk about that, then we could talk about it the next time. But the addiction is now this is it's designed for us to become addicted to each other. That's to keep us to pair bond and to keep us together long enough to rear the kids, right? To make sure that the kids are, grown and out of the house, So all of these things that we do, so we can receive the drugs from each other, right? And just, I mean, the minute we actually meet each other, the minute we meet every living, breathing creature on this earth, right, does the exact same thing, and that's what smell. The first thing we do is smell. When you see a canine walking up to another canine, the first thing they do is what? Smell, right? And
Hmm.
so what are they doing? They're smelling our DNA. They're smelling our immune system. They're smelling the drugs that we have could offer the other person, right? And so that's what makes us go, oh my God, I'm in love, because it takes no effort to fall in love, actually. It takes effort to stay in love, right? So
Mm.
we're actually saying the wrong things when people break up, they say, I love you, but I'm no longer in love with you, right? Well, actually, that's a good thing because it's actually backwards. It should what we should be saying. In love is is the altered state of consciousness. In love is the infatuation stage. That's the stage that takes no effort. We all can fall in love. It takes no effort to fall in love. You don't say, "Oh yeah, I want to fall in love," right? You fall in love, right? What takes effort is true love because it's the next stage of the true love that you have to go through, right? And um, that's one of the major parts of just creating that addiction. Once we in that true love, we become addicted to each other. We become addicted to what you do for me, the things that the help that the help me, right? You help me, right? I like that. And again, remember when I said every time we do something for each other, we release certain neurotransmitters. We release those chemicals. And those chemicals in our brain makes us feel good. So if it makes us feel good, it makes us feel good about you, right? And so we know that I yearn for you. So you go out of town and you out of town. My body now is yearning for the significant other to give me my drugs, right? So all of
Mm-hmm.
those drugs are those phenylethylamine, serotonin, dopamine, vasopressin. All of those different drugs are drugs we get from each other. These are natural drugs. These are no different than cocaine and all of these other drugs that we get. It responds the same way in the synaptic part of our brain with the synapses. It does the exact same thing. Yeah,
Listen, I'm my mind is blown because who knew all these singers all this time talk about I'm addicted to your loving? Like that is true. I just thought that was just
it's true.
poetic hyperbole. That is
It's
true.
true. And real fast, it's so
Yeah.
true. It's so true. Hold on to this again because I know I used this term once and I'm going to use it again one more time. It's so true. We're so addicted to our significant other sometimes to the point when that person dies. What have you heard sometimes? When that person dies, 2 weeks, a month, or 2 months, what happens? That other significant other end up dying too, as
Yeah.
well.
I've heard of that.
That's just how strong those chemicals bond you to become one because part of you have died when your significant other goes because you've been bonded so long to the point where you just can't go without that significant other. And what we call that is Takasubu cardiomyopathy. And we just seen that recently. What's the young lady that died? Her mother, I think her mother died first, or for Star Wars, the Star Wars lady. Remember, she died, and then her mom's
Carrie
died.
Fisher.
Yeah, and that was the same thing. Remember, it was 2 weeks later, right?
Hmm.
Cerebral cardiomyopathy, and that's what we experience with couples too as well. Does sometimes they leave 2 weeks after. That's just how strong we are addicted to someone else. And like I said, we could talk about detoxing from that too in the next show.
Sure, sure, sure. Wow. So in listening to all this, I suppose how do I know I'm in love with a person? Because you talk about being in love, right? And
Yeah.
anybody can fall in love, right? It doesn't take
Mhm.
any effort. But like, how do I know that I really love that person beyond just that infatuation stage?
Yeah, that's a good question because they do have this thing that's called the five love stages, and I wish my colleague was on with me because she could break it down really good too. But there are stages that we go through when we really know that at one stage, when we once we leave that in love stage, and then we go to the next stage where we're getting to know each other, we're getting to really discover the real things about each other, right? You squeeze the toothpaste in the middle, you leave your socks on the floor, right? So this is now knowing that if I can actually deal with this, or is this really okay for me? When you really realize that these things are things that I can deal with this person, right? And you go through that stage, then you go through that 7 years, the 7 years stage, or the 2 year. Actually, it's down to 2 years now. When you aren't trying to break up with this person, right? You're still trying to, love this relationship, make this relationship work, right? And then you go to that 7 year. You probably heard the term 7 year itch, right? Then you
Hmm.
go through that. You go through that process, and that process is, hey, we're good. We're good. We passed those different stages, and I know I love you. I know I love you for sure. But in the short term, just in the short term, when you know you're yearning for this person now, when you miss this person, when you're thinking this person, when you start doing, you've heard this before. What I'm saying is not something that we don't know. The only thing that I'm doing is just adding the science to it, right? Just so you can get a better understanding of everything that we're talking about today. You all know what I'm talking about. I'm just adding the science to it, right? So when we start completing each other's sentences, when we think of something and your significant other says it, right? When you think about calling your significant other and your significant other end up calling you before you end up calling them, right? What's happening now is that the major histocompatibility complex is starting to merge is starting to merge together as you are. The more you're together, it's starting to merge to put you actually into oneness, and that's why you start completing, because you're starting to become one with each other. That's real. When we talk about oneness, that is not fake. It is so real, right? And that's how we know that once we understand our non-negotiable requirements, our needs, and our wants, and we are being and we're getting those from our significant other, and our significant other is making us feel good, not disrespected, but making us feel good, right? Every time we're around them, we get that feeling of, man, I really love this person. This person is really good for me, right? And we know then we're in love.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that knowledge. That's some great wisdom right there. And our question was asked. Do we have time to talk about the stages of love that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so those are part of the stages. When we go to the first stage is the in love stage, and then we go to the 2 year stage, and that's that stage. That's that stage where we start learning more about each other, and realizing, hey, is this a non-negotiable requirement for me? Is this a need? Is this a want? Is this something that I really can't deal with, right? That I'm just discovering in this new significant other, right? And when you realize that, yeah, I can deal with this. This is fine. This is great. This is great. But when you at the point where you go, no, 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 I can't agree with that. No, 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 no. Then you have to actually reevaluate your that relationship in those stages that you're going through. Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because you're talking about becoming bonded to one person. And so that will make me think that if we're one, there's no need for me to venture outside of here. But we all know that there are times when we might know a person or two that has their foot in a different pond, that maybe if they try to become one with another person. So I'm trying to understand what causes us to feel a need to step out on our partners.
Wow. Man, you are really asking some really good questions, brother. Wow. I'm really enjoying this. You're really asking the right questions. Now, there's several variables to this,
Okay.
and I'm in this conversation a lot, but sometimes I just don't get enough time to really get deep into it because it's a panel, right? Several people. So I really enjoy this because stepping out, I always have to tell people that stepping out, it isn't when we say, well, that's something that we shouldn't do. That's something that it's another word that I'm trying to find. Um, Gosh, it isn't an excuse, right?
Hmm.
So what I'm actually saying too is that stepping out isn't an excuse, because it's always a reason why. It is not an excuse because it's always a reason why. And it's always important for us to try to find that reason, especially if you experience infidelity in a relationship. And it's good to go to counseling so you could try to find the reason why this actually happened. Now, I want you to remind me of another biological reason why it can happen too, as well, right? Right now, I'm just talking about a social reason, right? So it's so important to understand what could be those reasons that we can actually do this, and socially, right? And sometimes we get bored. We don't have novelty in our relationship. One person is saying, "Hey, can we do some things? Can we go some places? Can we venture and have fun with each other?" And one is like, "Ah, I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. I don't want to such and such. Well, imagine that other person, the state that other person is in, that you're putting that person in. That person is feeling bored, right? In this relationship, because there's no novelty amongst our relationship right now. It's predictable. You come home, you look at TV, you eat food, you watch another movie, and then you go to bed, and then that's just the cycle, right? And again, that's just one reason out of all of those variables. It's a tangential, but it's really so many different reasons that people actually venture into that having the affair. Let me tell you this though. Sometimes we end up running into somebody that have the same combination as our husband, the same combination as our wife. And this is biologically speaking. Remember when I talk about that bond that you bond? Somebody out here, when we talk about soulmates, I get this question all the time. Is there only one soulmate? And because we think that there's only one soulmate, there's several soulmates of yours that's out there. And you may run into that soulmate that's out there. How to be careful is how you respond to running into somebody else that gives you that same chemical feeling when you run into them and you go, wow, and sometimes our willpower is not that strong. Sometimes you have weak willpower at that time and things happen, right? And that's why it is important to get help, for the both of you guys to go to counseling. Yeah.
Okay, and so you want me to remind you about another biological reason?
Yeah, that was it. The biological reason is because sometimes we run into another human being that have those same chemical, that same. Okay, this is another term. The human leukocyte antigens. The human leukocyte antigens is us smelling each other's DNA, smelling each other's immune system, and that is usually because we're trying to make a match. When we smell each other, we either are attracted to the person, or we are reject the person. When we don't reject the person, what the human leukocyte antigens is saying is that you guys have a wonderful opposite match, because that's what a match is. A match is opposite DNA, not the similar DNA. It's the opposite DNA. And that's what we're smelling for, to see if, to make sure that your significant other has an opposite DNA. So that says when we have a child, that we'll have a perfect child, because you probably have heard before a long time ago where family members really should not, procreate, because what happens to the baby when it, when it's a DNA that's similar to each other, right? So that's what we're looking for. So that becomes the opposite match. So sometimes you might run into that opposite match at the networking party or something or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, this person. But then that's where the willpower to have the strength not to act on it.
Well, now you're talking about multiple soulmates, right? So, and I find it to be a fascinating concept, right? Because it definitely breaks the paradigm I'm used to, just one soulmate. So, if I come across, I got a choice of three soulmates, how do I
Yeah.
know which is the one for me?
Well, usually, that's a great question. Usually, when you do run into that soulmate, hopefully you're running into that one soulmate. But if you happen to run into three people that you feel all three it might be the soulmate, then I think that's when you're going to have to reevaluate as far as social compatibility. Now, who out of those three, which one that you actually feel socially compatible to, right? That you think you're going to have a really good time with, versus, see, because you might have that chemistry, but you don't have the social compatibility, right? You might have the chemistry, but she doesn't like going to the movies. She doesn't like going skiing, right? She doesn't like skydiving. And when I say she doesn't like it, I really mean like she's going to tell you, no, I don't do it. I will never do it. And don't ask me to do it. So just think about how your relationship will be when everything that you like is not compatible to her. right?
Mm,
So you might have the chemistry, but you may not have the compatibility, the social compatibility.
that's powerful. Chemistry
Yeah,
and social compatibility. That's
that's right.
you hear that, folks. Make sure you keep that in mind. Chemically, you might link up, but look at that social compatibility.
That's
So
right.
now we talked about, since we're talking about infidelity, one of our audience members asks, "Is infidelity usually symptomatic of the person who actually commits the cheating? Is that a problem with the person who's cheating? So if I go and cheat on my partner, is that a problem? Is that my problem, or is there something more going on there?"
See, I love these questions. I love these questions because people see we don't talk about this. See, sometimes we get the advice, it's not you, it's him. And we're doing disservice to couples when we're saying that, because it might be something that you are treating this person the way you're treating your mate. Your mate is saying, I this is remember when I said earlier, the way you're treating me hurts me. Hurt is associated with the same brain region as physical pain. I want to feel good. So I go to the gym, and the trainer, not I, let's just say woman, she goes to the gym. The trainer is telling her she's beautiful. The
Mm,
trainer is telling her, you are so intelligent, you're so smart. What you told me about what I should do with the stocks, I went and did it and it worked. You are so intelligent and smart. When you told me what to say to my boss about making changes at the gym, I did it and it worked. Not only are you so intelligent, but you're so beautiful. And I want to tell you this. Since you came in the gym 6 months ago, I see a major difference in your body. You are really doing great. Now, the 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 problem with her, do we say it's really a major problem psychologically with her? Or are we saying that she's just asking for what we all need from the laws of nature, the way God created us? And
mm,
those are affirmations, right? You're beautiful, you're desirable, right? And this doesn't just apply to women. I've had guy clients where are actually now saying, I don't feel that I'm desirable to my wife.
mm,
So imagine not getting any compliments when you're at home. Imagine getting no compliments. But then, because this was a study done years ago, where the husband gets to work and the secretary is giving him being a cheerleader. Being a cheerleader. We don't,
mm.
our wife is not being our cheerleader. When I come home and I tell her, babe, guess what? I made a great deal. I got a deal. I made a deal for the business, and I brought in $2.5 million for them. And they're gonna give us a trip, and and I got me a new office. And then check this out, Brother Montos. After you say that, and she does this. Oh, that's great. Imagine how you would feel. Imagine how you would feel. Not only imagine how you would feel, imagine how a child would feel. Would you do that to your child? If your child came home and said, Daddy, Daddy, look what I made. Look what I made in school. And my teacher gave me a star. And my teacher also said, next time I get a chance to get extra cookies, and I'll get a chance uh, to go to the gym early, and all of these things that he's so happy to tell dad about. And you say, oh, yeah, I'm watching TV. How do you think that would make a child feel? Well, that would make a human being feel that same way. So, what do we do? Sometimes we seek out that love that we're not getting at home. And I'm not talking about, I'm not just saying man, I mean woman. I'm talking about both parties, right? Sometimes we go out and we seek that which that we're not getting at home, right? And sometimes, and I don't mean consciously, Brother Matos, I don't mean that they're saying, I'm gonna go out and look for somebody. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you getting it without even knowing that you're getting it, but it feels good to you. Remember the lady going to the gym, right? She didn't ask him to give her compliments that her husband is not giving her, right? She didn't ask for that. But does it feel good, Brother Montos, when she's getting those compliments at the gym?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because her husband didn't even say, babe, I noticed that your body's looking really good. I noticed that it's paying off. Wow, that's awesome. He's not saying anything. Matter of fact, he might even say the opposite, right? He might say dirty words like, get your fat butt in the kitchen and cook. But does she get that at the gym? No. So what we usually say is that the person who's actually doing the cheating, right? That is them only. So we're not adding what do you contribute? What did you contribute to
Hmm.
make it happen?
Hmm.
What did you contribute to make it happen? Instead of just blaming it on that one party. Do you understand what I mean, Brother Matos?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. It's we all contribute something to it, to any interaction. So it's just figuring out that part.
That's right.
Totally get it. Last question as we wrap up tonight, and believe you me, we have a whole lot more to talk about in these coming weeks. So I appreciate the conversation tonight. Uh, One of our audience members wants to know, what are some common deal breakers that you've seen that have ended relationships?
Man, a common one. You know, Back in the day, I would say finances. But now I'm starting to see that we're not being as affectionate and loving to each other now because there's so many things that's out now to distract us from giving each other that, you know, one of the love languages, I I was like one of the first brothers when I was on Stevie Wonder station, KGLH, and I was the relationship guru on there. And I was the first guy who started talking about the love languages when the love languages came out. Now, what I'm learning is that those aren't just the love languages. Those are other love languages that that's your own personal love language. You have to think about know a lot about self to know what your love languages are. But one of those love languages is really, I think, it's everybody's love language, and that's physical touch.
Hmm.
And today, I think we're not getting that physical touch. A lot of clients that I'm getting now is like, well, he's not affectionate. He doesn't touch me anymore. He doesn't want to hold me anymore. We don't cuddle anymore. You know, and you would think it was all about money because that was the mantra back in the day. Money, money. But when you have a good communication, when you have a good relationship with each other, you understand that you're in here as a team. And when it comes to money, if you do have that solid relationship, when it comes to money, both of you are as a team, right? We're going to figure out how we're going to make this work. We're not going to let finances break us up, right? And the reason why it did back in the day is because that was the mantra, right? If when you have arguments about money, right? But when you have a solid relationship, the both of you got your thing together. Whether you're losing money or not, we understand we're losing money. But what are we going to do? Because we're not going to break up because we are losing money, not you are losing us money, right? Now, you are losing us money sometimes could be one of the common breakup in relationship. You understand what I'm saying? The difference is that I'm, using my money without telling her, and using it and losing it. It's not benefiting. It's not doing something that's going to help, our family, our bills, our house, our investment, right? That will break up a marriage because, you aren't um, consulting with your partner. That's your partner when it comes to finances. But right now, so many things are out now to distract us from wanting to spend time with our significant other, right? Quality time. We got people. We got people of all ages that are playing video games. You got people of all ages that are on social media now. You got people of all ages that are distracted by different things that are on social media, television, and all of that, right? That's taken away from our ability to interact with each other to the point where we actually spend quality time with each other. Because people ask me this, well, we watch television together. So, Brother Matos, check this out. We watch television together. We spend quality time. We watch TV together. You're spending quality time with the television. You're not spending quality time with each other. Now, what I usually say, if you are spending quality time with television, at least take out time to have a conversation about what you're watching on television. Pause the TV, have a conversation about it. Now you're spending quality time, right? But quality time, just watching TV, you're actually communicating and giving the television its attention. And that's it.
Well, brother Dr. Simms, we are out of time, but I like to. The last question was a little on the kind of slow, going down slow. Can you leave us with one positive thing to really help us work on developing better relationships with our partners? Just one tip that we can implement between now and the next episode.
Yeah, adding more into your relationships. Novelty. Novelty. People jump off the mountains with a parachute, and when they jump off the mountains and they hit the ground, they receive serotonin. It makes them feel good, right? They go back up and they do it again. But eventually it becomes boring. But what they do is go and find another mountain to do it. That's novelty. So keep novelty in your relationship, right? Do things, right? Don't let your relationship become boring, right? Even if it's just playing cards, cut the TV off and play cards. Come up with a new game and do things. Put novelty in your relationship. And those of you who are single, this is my slogan. Preparing yourself is to prevent repairing yourself.
Amen to that. Now, listen, I'm all about risk management. Risk management. So, what we did not say is go jump off a mountain. We just go say metaphorically. Go find something exciting to do. If this excitement is not your excitement, go find the next excitement. But very importantly, do it together as a couple. That's the important part. So we're out of time for this. The Science of Love. We really appreciate you being here. Please share this stream. Also, if you're not haven't liked our page yet, please go ahead and like the page, Los Angeles Sigmas here on Facebook. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. Brother Dr. Simms, thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedule to be here with us tonight. By the way, we just want to give a shout out to Dr. Simms because he is a neophyte of our fraternity, just joined last fall. And true to being that great Sigma man in the making, he just jumped right in and wanted to lend his expertise to make sure that we can deliver culture for service and service for humanity everywhere in the world. So thank you very much, Brother Dr. Simms. Brother Faust, thank you for helping to make sure he's our tech guy who you're not seeing right now, but he is the brain behind what we have going on. Again, share the stream, like the page, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.